Hartford is a community where the arts are integral to students' academic development, fostering 21st century leaders, creative thinkers, and problem solvers. One of the things that was important to Dr. Adamowski when he first brought us all together was that we understood the context of Hartford, because the people in the room had different understandings of what was this community that we were trying to have this conversation in, and he was asking us to draft recommendations to give to the Board of Ed about the arts for our children. So it was really important that we had a full understanding of our context. We are one of the poorest cities in the country, surrounded by some of the richest towns in the country, which makes a really interesting dichotomy. And then the other important thing that he wanted us to understand was that when we started the reform effort with Dr. Adamowski in 2006, that 69% of Connecticut students in grade 3 were reading at grade level, but here in Hartford, only 30% of our children were reading on grade level at grade 3. And the reason that grade 3 is so important, in case you don't know, is that actually city planners look at the reading rates of grade 3 students and determine how many jail cells they're going to need in 15 to 20 years on the level that those children are reading at grade 3. Because grade 3 is the year where they change from learning to read, where they start reading to learn. And if you're not reading to learn by grade 3, you're on a different track. So this was daunting, and I didn't know this information until I sat on this task force. I learned, as an arts person, this is a different kind of understanding of how important what we're doing when we're talking about building up these this arts vision for our children. It was imperative that we supported this reform. This was not going to happen, and it was only going to help our arts community, if we got that on a different track. The other thing that was important that we understood when we were doing our planning was the reform strategy. If you're not familiar, I'm just going to kind of quickly talk about Hartford schools these days. It basically means that we have a portfolio of schools with a lot of different themes, both magnets and non-magnets. We have a sports sciences academy, we have a performing arts school, pre-K-8 right now, we have a nursing academy, we have an environmental studies school. So the thinking was, and it was successful in other urban districts, you create a school that has a theme or a center that the students feel and are drawn to that they could learn in. I put this slide in at the request of our current superintendent, Dr. Christina Kishimoto. She wanted us to make sure that when we made this presentation that people understood that since that time we have already made growth. We are definitely not at where, obviously there's still a gap. I think we're actually at about 50% now, reading at grade level. That third grade number I think is closer to 50%. Our graduation rates are up. We now have 48 choice schools. 11 of them are in bowl range. So that means 11 of them are fully autonomous. They're performing at the level they should be and competitively from across the state. We're the subject of a Harvard University press book. Apparently, Hartford is quite a district. I just talked to some colleagues who went down to a conference in New Orleans, and what's happening here with this reform and this strategy is being talked about at a national level. So this is exciting that the arts are now folding into being an important part of that. This was what happened. We had the task force, and the task force determined, after looking at all this data, and then studying national models, we looked at a number of cities, urban centers around the country to find out how they're doing arts, how they're bringing arts to their kids. And then we kind of put all that together. One thing we knew, we needed a community partnership. That was something, we knew this was not going to happen just by the school district's decisions, just by what the arts community was going to do, just by the community at large and families. We knew this needed to be a community partnership, and that this was an approach that was working nationally. So that was the first ID, the thing that we ID'd. Then we started the Arts Education Steering Committee, and this steering committee was charged with writing a multi-year plan, which we have now. It's actually a 10-year plan that outlines the directions and a growth model and implementation plan, which I'll go into a little bit in a minute or two. And in order to write that, we knew it was important that we started talking. We started going out to the community, we engaged. We had roundtables of some people that were here, were part of some of those roundtables. We had roundtables with teachers, with students, with all sorts of constituent groups, and listened to all of their concerns and their ideas, and tried to fold all of that into this plan that we were building. And one of the things we also did as part of our initial research was a group of 11 went down to Dallas, Texas, because we identified this model down there called Big Thought, this partnership approach. And they've been around about 13 years now. and 14 actually. They had some components that we were interested in learning more about, and they also had some major national funding, like a $17 million Wallace grant that came to them in support, and also leveraged by the school district to put arts teachers back in schools. So it was a really interesting approach, and we wanted to find out more. So we did go down there, and so some of our stuff is, we took what we liked and left the rest, and we're very transparent with them about it, and very happy about what we learned. We now have a governance board and an advisory council, and this school year we have in our scale up of our arts integration work, which is what we're going to talk a little bit more deeply about with the RFQ. We're currently in 12 schools and targeted to go into 6 more for the next school year. So that's why we're all here, because we're trying to build capacity of our arts programs, build capacity in our schools.